Welcome to another episode of the Advice First podcast. This is your host, Robert Clark. Today I'm joined by a fantastic guest, Dr. Brian Edwards with 360 Dentistry. Welcome to the Advice First podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. You know, our listeners seem to love when we have doctors on the podcast. And I've heard you say like there's an asterisk next to your doctor, but especially for what we're going to get into and why you're sitting in this room with me, they are going to find out you're not the average dentist.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to dive into that today.
Awesome. Yeah, my family likes to remind me I'm just a dentist, so you can just call me Brian.
That's rude. Your kids do too?
Yeah,
or they don't know the difference?
They don't know the difference.
Oh, good. Let's start with that, because I know you have the family and this growing practice in Valencia, but how'd that really start for you? How'd you get into the position you're in today?
How much time we got on this podcast? I got recruited to play volleyball at University Pacific.
Wow.
And they're known for having one of the best clinical dental schools in the nation, if not the world. So I realized quite quickly in D1 volleyball that this was not going to be my career forever, and I figured I should figure something else out. So wow. I went to the first meeting because I hated the dentist growing up, and they called on me and said, "Why are you here?" I said, "To be truthful, I don't really know. I probably should leave." But the guy captivated me and kind of made dentistry in a way that I didn't really see before, in terms of making a difference in people's lives, being involved with science, having control over aesthetics, having control of changing someone's lives that doesn't have confidence. And it was a really interesting spin on it. So I got involved with the pre-dental club and decided that's what I was going to do. So at the end of college, I took a year off and I worked at the Macaroni Grill that's now closed over in Stevenson Ranch. And I traveled the world for 5 months with a backpack, and then dove right into dental school, and that's kind of how it all became. So I think having that understanding of what it's not like to be a dentist, and then coming from the view of, wow, there's a lot of information out there that we actually should know as a patient and we should be aware of, and coming to my office, we try to take that time to explain it, because so many times you're rushed in and rushed out, and you get the bill at the end and say, what was all that for? So right. I think that kind of helps me in the end. So
absolutely. I mean, that's very much what I want to dive into today, because as a patient of yours, and this was, I think the first time I saw you was 5-6 years ago, and then went back even this last year, and you are not the average dentist. And what I mean when I say that is, like, normally when the dentist tells me to do certain things, I'm like, oh yeah, like sure, yeah, I'll floss every day. And then, you go see them 6 months later and they're like, have you been flossing? You're like, no, sorry. Yeah. And after seeing you have this very unique process that made me actually want to pay attention, and almost similar to what you were talking about when you were back in school, like the education side of it, but you've been able to incorporate that into your practice. What's that been like, coming in to be a dentist and be like, no, you know what, I'm going to do this different. I know everyone says do it this way. I'm actually going to change the script a little bit.
Yeah. I think anyone out there that's got a business or that's working to sell a product or a service, is you have to understand what's working and what's not. And imagine that your patient or your client comes in not liking you, thinks that you're painful, thinks that you're expensive, and they don't trust you, right? You got all the cards against you. So I'm taking the spin on it where, hey, maybe I can use that to my advantage, right? If I can solve these hurdles, then maybe this becomes a place that people talk about. And maybe this becomes a place where they haven't gone to the dentist for so long, and now is a place they finally trust. And if you can get to that point of, you're not selling this product, you're not selling this service, they want it. How do you get to that? And I think that no matter if you're, selling cords, or you're, talking about insurance, right? You could say all day long why it's good for me, until I realize in the fact where, well, maybe this is something that I want. And so when you talk about teeth, a lot of people don't understand it. They don't see it. They don't understand what's going on. So instead of focusing on numbers and a volume practice, we focus more on the quality of it and getting a team around me that shares the same values and I think that really shows in how people feel when they come in, and they also too start listening to you. You know, when you're taking the time to explain things, whether it be through the video we show or whether it be through us taking the time with each patient saying the same thing 365 days a year, you know, it gets old and tiring, but I feel like each person needs to know it. So we try to give you your, 8 years of schooling in 1 hour and try to understand why it's beneficial and why it can benefit you. And then it's your choice to decide whether you want to apply that or not.
8 years of schooling in 1 hour.
Yeah.
That's not an easy mission. And clean their teeth at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes, the educational pieces were, I don't know why when your team explained things to me, it just clicked. I had literally, between last year that I saw you and 5 years before that, I hadn't been to the dentist at all, which is terrible. But that's just how much I didn't care. And now I can say all of that's changed. And one of my favorite things about how your team has handled this is, gosh, the first time seeing you this last year since you formed 360 Dentistry was you took the time to spend 20 minutes to be like, Robert, how do you like having your teeth worked on? And asking some of those questions. So how'd you come up with kind of that process as well to take in the client's preferences along the way?
So one of the things you're referring to is on the new patients, we give an interview to the patient to kind of find out some of those hurdles right away.
Yeah.
Why should I find out about the hard way, right? If there's something that really bothers you, let's say you hate the smell of mint. Guess what? We got a lot of that around. So knowing that before you even step in the room, we've already won that, right? So trying to get that person to feel comfortable so you minimize a lot of their things that they tell you right off the bat they don't like. I think that focusing on the patient and what their wants and what their concerns are is going to be a lot more successful in the end than putting the same person in the same system all day long.
Yep. No, I love that. And it plays very much into the advice first model where, you're not trying to sell someone something that they don't need or that they won't want or won't like. It's like you mentioned in the beginning, it's very hard. Not too many people like going to the dentist. So how do you make this appealing to patients?
There's a great episode of Seinfeld where they're talking about the anti-dentites, right? It's all the people that hate the dentist, right? And so I feel like if you can overcome some of those hurdles of not liking you and say, listen, I understand you don't like being here, but if we get you on this track of prevention, you're going to get a point where you actually don't mind coming in anymore. The expenses are no longer going to be high. You're going to be on a maintenance phase. There's no more surprises. There's no more pain. There's no more expensive dentistry. And the problem is people wait too long to go take care of something that by the time they come in, they got 25 things they got to take care of, and then they get overwhelmed. They don't even know where to start. So the want is to at least have a plan that you can understand and also a plan that you can take in small steps. So if we do these little things now, we'll get you to a point, a little time, money, and TLC in the beginning here. But once you get to that point of like, wow, like I really don't have any more problems, and wow, it's not hurting anymore, and wow, they're giving me good things, right? How many times did I go in the dentist growing up, this isn't right, you need to floss more, you need that more. I'm like, well, why am I paying you to come here when you're telling me that I'm not doing a good job? So there's that little hurdle, and then all of a sudden that light bulb goes off for a lot of our patients, when they start realizing that, wow, it's working, and wow, this whole idea of systemic inflammation that we hear a lot about, trying to people be healthy and trying to take care of their bodies. They don't really see that 6 millimeter pocket is growing 600 types of viruses, cold, flu, pneumonia. There's bacteria, there's all kinds of fungus. That stuff grows in the moist, warm environment in your mouth. It's disgusting. Right? But if we look at it from the standpoint of if we can help keep it clean, what are you even doing with the toothbrush and floss? I don't know. We're just supposed to do it, right? So that's where they're like, hey, forget what you know. Let's kind of reteach you. A lot of these things when you talk about how the flow of the office and these paperwork and all that stuff was because I worked at 9 offices from Orange County, Woodland Hills, Pasadena. I've learned from a lot of good people that are doing a good thing. I've also seen a lot of things I never want to repeat again. So I think that's the same thing with the patients in their home care is if we can give you the cheat sheet, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You're not the first person to pick up a toothbrush. If we could just give you, hey, what you've been doing is clearly not working. Let's figure out another game plan, or what you've been doing is working, don't change it, right? So surrounding yourself with people that are better than you or that know more of you, that figure things out, right? Like your disability insurance, I know nothing about it, right? Same thing with dentistry. 99% of people think they know about it because they've got teeth, right? but they don't understand the science behind it. They don't see it daily.
Yep.
And it's really cool for us, especially my hygienists, when they're seeing results from these patients that are like, oh my God, I picked up that stupid water pick that squirts water out,
right.
and my bleeding's gone, my pocket's gone, my inflammation's gone. I no longer have this infection going on. And it's pretty incredible to see the hygienists see these results daily.
Right.
You know, a patient comes in 2 to 3 times a year, and they don't get to see that reward of people coming in with terrible health and then actually improving and feeling good about themselves.
Yeah.
And then their costs go down too,
Yep.
right? People don't think about, if I actually come in more, I'm going to save money in the long run.
Yeah.
The more I stay away, the more these procedures and expenses are going to get higher, and then you're going to hate it even more.
Yep.
So trying to get them to understand it from, if you don't like coming, come more.
Yep.
Which is a completely opposite of our normal human reaction is, if we don't like something, you stay away from it, right?
Yep. Yeah, and it's a balancing act. Like, you know, people think you're trying to run up the bill, or the one thing you explained to me was, you know, do you want to take care of these cavities now or later, blah, blah. You know, that was one of the things on the questionnaire. And I'm like, yeah, I like to kick them off down the road. And then recently, when we were talking about recording this podcast, you're like, yeah, but what people don't realize is by kicking that can down the road, the cavity gets bigger, then it gets harder. And now, you know, instead of a cavity fill, we're doing a root canal, and that's, you know, you're hurting yourself,
right,
as opposed to taking care of it.
And I think that all wraps around back to this whole idea of who are we talking about.
Yeah.
There are some people that have zero interest in taking care of it until it hurts.
Yep.
That's okay. But my goal is to try to at some point convince them that, hey, if it's not hurting now, this is the best time to take care of it,
mm-hmm.
right? So if we can avoid all x-rays, that'd be great, but it shows a lot of information we can't see with the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole idea of like, don't wait for you to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing is like, don't wait for you to have disability problems and now you should have been knocking on my door. So it's those same problems that come back and haunt us that you learn from. So we have some people that have lost a lot of teeth and they say, you know what, I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going to start being proactive. Yeah. So for a lot of the patients that come in the door, they have no idea that there's a lot of people out there with bad health.
Right.
And they don't feel it.
Right.
So before it gets to that point, at least letting everyone that comes in the door understand what's in it for them in health, and mm-hmm. to let them understand too, if we can do these little things now, you don't have to worry about things.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not worrying about the dentist, then at least there's one thing in this life you can control, right?
Right.
COVID's taught us that there's so much out in this world that's just crazy, and it just it's just overwhelming. Yep. And so I think it's a good reminder, and I think that's what taught me too, is that there are things you can control in this life, and part of it is who you surround yourself with and how you take care of yourself and how you respond to things, right? Letting things go or actually letting it affect you. Yep. So this whole idea of like just focus on what you can control, and gum disease, it's affecting a lot of people and they don't realize it. Mm-hmm. There's some statistics too saying that 80% of the adults have some form of gum disease, and people with gum disease are nearly twice as likely to have a heart attack, right? And they talk about people with diabetes, 95% of those people with diabetics actually have gum disease because their body can't heal and protect itself from all the bacteria and infection. Wow. So there's a lot of issues in terms of sleep apnea and snoring and dry mouth and issues with heart attacks, and there's so many other things that we're looking at in terms of the health. We do have some patients that we can diagnose diabetes because they're not healing, right? We've done everything right in terms of the gums. You still have all this bleeding in this wound in your mouth and it's not healing. Go see your primary care physician. So there's a lot of things that when you get oral cancer screening or you get these things at the office, a lot of people aren't explained what we're actually doing. So I think sometimes too, having that education of there's more than just what you're feeling in the chair from the dentist standpoint, that it's really paying off long term for people to be proactive. And there's a lot of great dentists out there. So do your homework, do your research, ask some friends, or good advice too is, if I ever go to a different area, I say, go look up what you find is the best oral surgeon or orthodontist, and then ask those places who the best dentists are. Because a lot of those specialists know who to go to and what's going on. Same thing, I'm sure, with your profession of, who in terms of financial advice or who in terms of this are good people to talk to.
Yep.
So some of those reviews out there can be misleading in terms of who's actually paying a lot of money and attention to try to get their reviews up.
Yep.
And I think like just anything else in this world is that the more you find a place that you're happy with and you do things once the right way, then you don't have to spend twice the money down the road and doing it over again.
Yep. Absolutely. It's like maintaining your car. Yeah. What's the famous expression? Your smile is the window to your
person's soul.
And your soul.
Yep.
That's great. 80% of people likely have gum disease.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yeah, and what really got me was the fact that they say that there's more bacteria in your mouth than there are people in this world.
Yeah.
and it's disgusting to think about how quickly it happens. And that's not what this podcast is about. It's about trying to gross people about my profession.
Right.
But just how the fact is every single person in this world can take care of themselves. And the mouth is an entry point for bacteria, viruses, and obviously everything going on with COVID is they're finding a lot of hydrogen peroxide and diluted with 50% water can be a great way to kind of minimize some of the growth and stuff that's happening in the mouth. So before people have the procedure at our office, they are rinsing with that. Just trying to minimize the risk of things that are happening in the mouth and spreading to other people in terms of air droplets and infection control and whatever we can do. So there's a lot of advice and tips and tricks your dentist can also give you in terms of how to keep things healthy.
Yeah. Speaking of COVID, what was it like, going through March 2020 and you're seeing people like normal, and then all of a sudden, this thing's getting bigger. Do you shut down, in some capacity? Like, people need you, you're essential. Like, how was it navigating that?
Yeah, a majority of the dental offices shut down.
Yeah.
We were closed for a little over 3 months, just trying to figure out what we were up against. The hard part that people found was when they had dental emergencies, there wasn't anyone treating them. Mm-hmm. So they kind of had to cover it up with medication and antibiotics and just try to wait it out, which as a provider, it's obviously the worst thing you want to tell the patient is I can't see you or take care of you. Right. I'd like to think that our office does a pretty good job of prevention, so I didn't have very many calls, but it is also something that they don't really realize how much they appreciate the dentist until all of a sudden they need you on a Saturday morning and 8 a.m. and wait, what do you mean everyone's closed? So that has also kind of been one of the reasons why if we take a little more time and talk about prevention, hopefully you never get to that point. Because it does get painful and expensive real quick, and the goal is to avoid that. Right. I'm a dentist. I don't like being in the chair. Yeah. You're a patient. You don't like being in the chair. If you're in the hygiene chair and you're on your prevention mode going on there and we catch little things, it can become really easy and really maintainable, and all this fear of the dentist can go downhill. Yeah. Or even in terms of root canal, they have such a bad connotation of pain and infection. I heard the story, my friend did this and that. But a lot of people, if you talk to them, actually have fallen asleep during root canals. Because if you get to the infection before it blows up in the face and the mouth, then the anesthetic works and you can get numb. A lot of these people wait until it gets really bad, and then the local anesthetic doesn't work. And so now you're working on basically a pimple that's ready to pop, and it hurts. Yeah. Don't touch it, right? Yeah. So if you can actually get that tooth taken care of before the symptoms occur, it's going to be so much better. So learning from those people that have gone down that road in the past, avoid that, listen to your dentist. And if you have questions in terms of, is this necessary or not because I've got no pain, get a copy of the x-ray, go get a second opinion. Right. I mean, this is your mouth and your body, and you're more than entitled to getting more than one opinion on it. And I think that's something that's really cool and people don't take up enough of is, if you don't feel comfortable, go ask someone else. Mm-hmm.
That's such a great point. As a business owner, what was it like shutting down your doors for 3 months?
I think COVID was great because my wife and my kids are the best part of my life, but spending time with them all, COVID was great. But after a week of it, it started getting into, how am I going to take care of my employees? What's going to happen to the patients? Are doors going to open back up? What's going on with everything? So, it was definitely an uncertain time and a time that was hopefully something we never have to relive again. Yeah. But I think all we can do is learn from it and move on and try to hope that, prepare for the future and also, just make sure that you can take care of yourself. I got caught too as to there's no purpose of getting up. There's no purpose of taking care of myself. And, all we got to do is just live another day. Mm-hmm. And then it finally got to the point where, after burn started opening up in January again, and I thought, well, you know what? I'm starting to feel more sluggish, and my kids are running over me, and I can't keep up with them, and with work and stress, and life can get busy and hectic. And I think the one thing that COVID taught me was that you have choices to do things. You have choices to get up in the morning. You have choices to face the day in a positive light. You have a choice to control that stuff. Controlling COVID and controlling how it spreads and controlling if you get it or not. You can't do that. You can just do your best as to what you can do, and I think that's of everything looking back, that maybe was the one thing I got good out of COVID. Yeah. Everything else, I think everyone could agree that it was a really crappy time of life, but at the same time frame, it's also a good way to move forward, and it looks like things are moving in the right direction. The vaccine's out, and people are getting more confidence, and people are starting to get back to the dentist and start getting in terms of preventive care. And I've noticed the gym's getting busier too, and people feeling like, I don't know, I joke with my wife, but she says she didn't say this, but I said in January, I said, well, the gym's opening back up, and I would hate to get COVID there and then have to shut the office down and then all my employees are out of work. And, then that sets in the fear of what's happening. And she's like, well, you're more likely to die from a heart attack from all the stress you're going through than you are of actually dying from COVID. And I know it kind of seems a little bit like extreme to think that way, but that's what kind of got the green light going on for me that, you know what, I've gained a bunch of weight and I'm feeling fatigued and let's do something about it. So, since then, Tony and Afterburn has been fantastic for me in terms of a family that makes me feel like it feels good to get up and get the body moving, and then you feel better throughout the day and you start focusing on more of the things. And when life hits you, it's not quite as overwhelming stress. You feel like, okay, well, what else is coming my way?
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Absolutely. And I found out that my dentist is stronger than me. So that was awesome. I didn't know you had the volleyball background, so that makes a lot more sense though. But yeah, you're definitely an athlete. Let's see. Was it hard to, because I really want to dive into these systems processes because a lot of our listeners own businesses as well. And I know for me, the systems processes are, your greatest strength or your greatest weakness. But was it hard to get employees to come back after the shutdown of COVID?
Yes, It was hard. Also, 5 of my 10 employees got pregnant too. So in terms of not only am I dealing with hard to get people to come back, but I'm working at the highest risk environment and I'm dealing with training new people and for part-time position and trying to get the balance. The thing that I pride myself the most of is how wonderful my team is, and I just love working with them.
Yep.
It's been a long road to get to this point, but I feel that working with the right people and having that behind you and supporting you is really what's kept it going. So
absolutely. Was it because like you said, the taking a patient's preferences when you're first meeting them and all of these different systems that you have in your practice, has it been hard to train and hold employees accountable to those?
That's the one thing that's been hard, is trying to find a balance of how do I do the dentistry and run the business and train and all that. So It's been kind of one of the nice parts of growing is having a bigger team that can help with taking some of that off my plate. I've been working with a practice consultant once a month that's been kind of pushing me to kind of go down more of this business side in terms of looking at those things, because so far it's been just do dentistry all day long and then figure things out as I go.
Right.
And it's been really great as to finding that it doesn't all have to be done by me, and the other employees are feeling like they're more well trained and they're feeling more confident with having those things in place. Even just recently, it's been 4 years I've owned this, and we finally just came up with our mission statement and core values. Because for me, it's been so easy to feel like I know why we're here, I know what's going on.
Right.
I didn't quite realize that the employees and the new hires are still trying to figure out how things are run and what are we doing here and what's the goal and where are we going. And I think that of everything going on is that making sure that the end in mind is where you're going and how you're going to get there then comes from there. So in terms of the employees and all that stuff, it's been fantastic in terms of now coming back and having people that are in it for the right reasons. Yep. I think that after COVID, there was a lot of hard time to hire the right people. But the nice part that one of my hygienists recommended me is just be patient. Mm-hmm. It's so often enough we need someone right away and we just hire the next person that comes through the door, that I feel like when she told me that, it was a really light bulb that went off, was that I kept hiring when I needed someone, as opposed to hiring when I found that right person. Because it's a really hard thing to run your own business and to actually fire the wrong person too, right? I mean, hiring's easy because you look good on paper and you do a working interview and great, let's do it.
Yep.
But when it comes down to things that are not going right, and how do you change things, and how do you put things in place, and how do you work with that person, and how many attempts do you give them until you feel like you got to maybe part ways, and that's a hard thing to do. Yep. So, I think parting ways with someone that's not the right fit has been a huge learning curve for me, but it's also put me in a place today where all 10 of my employees have been fantastic, and I really, really enjoy working with all of them. And that's also what shows in when you come in as a patient. So when you get back to this whole idea that you had a good experience in my office, I wasn't the only person, right? There was every team around me is the one that welcomed you, got the tour, made friends with you, made your next appointment. There's so many things to it that can be an experience beyond what I can do. So this whole idea of multitasking and outsourcing and starting letting other people have tasks has been a hard thing as a business owner, where you want to have control of everything, and then you realize, hey, maybe they actually can do it better than I can.
Yep.
And trying to take the time to realize, like, hey, you do that, you do this, and getting those systems in place. So it hasn't been until the last year where we've more focused on systems and getting things written down and having everything organized. I think that we talked a little bit about the book where we were talking about for the Traction book, in terms of picking up that and listening to these people that have done things before that you don't realize as what you do in a business, that you can actually learn from all these other things and apply them. I thought, well, I'm a dentist, I can't apply these systems. And then all of a sudden I realized, wow. And now that things are getting in place and things are actually being tracked and people are very clear on their roles and very clear on hours and very clear on how things are run and how things are expected, it's been a fantastic relief of those issues don't come up as much. And also having connections of, weekly meetings of, let's get back on the same page. I thought we used to do it monthly. And then just in January, we decided, let's do it weekly. And it's been so much more pertinent and important to squash issues early and talk about things when they're fresh, as opposed to after 4 weeks go by, you don't really care as much anymore. Yeah. So I think connecting back in with the with the employees, and also too listening to what they have to say. Right? It's not all about me; it's about them, and what can I do to put them in a better position to succeed and flourish, and give them control to put out fires before it becomes a big issue.
Right.
So,
I mean, to one of the points that you said there, I think that's where I could really tell that I was like, no, this isn't the normal dentist that I'm used to, because I did have a fantastic experience, and I now love going to your office, and I mean that. But you were very little of that experience, and no offense, but 85% of that was your employees, doing the business that they knew was to be performed. And even on this last visit, like the hygienist I was working with, she was more excited about gum line improvements than I was, and it makes it so much fun because there's that positive feedback loop. But you don't you could get lucky and just hire the right employee who knows how to make it fun for patients, but that's not likely to be the case. It's the system that you give them to follow, so it's repeatable and every patient is getting that same experience. Where do you mentioned writing them down, and now you're doing the weekly meetings, but how are you communicating those systems to your employees? Is it a workbook that you're giving them, or are you reviewing it on some of these weekly meetings? What's that look like?
We have a handbook, but I feel like it's more of just for written purposes. We have it. I think the more the implementation of being involved in feedback, right, of being present in the office and walking around, and when there's something going on, how do you approach that in terms of a learning experience, as opposed to, hey, you did this wrong, hey, that's great, but maybe we could twist it this way. And then maybe they can start applying that, and then they see, wow, that worked. I think part of it has to do with, I have this vision in my head of all these things that I've seen in the past, and if I was that patient, what would that perfect experience be? And I think that I do a pretty good job of communicating that to my staff in terms of what do we need to achieve. And even something simple as having this sunglasses over their eyes instead of leaving their eyes just blank. To me as a owner, protecting their eyes from things getting in there, but also too, there's a little bit of a melatonin effect you get from a darker glass as opposed to the lights being bright in your eyes. Just that one little step of, I never thought about that. Right. But making that consistent part of the practice where there's follow-up and there's things that are not just mentioned once. So part of the meeting too is making people accountable in terms of if there's something we suggest should be improved, there's a whiteboard right behind it. That item goes on, that person's name goes on, and it sits there in the whole break room. So by the next week, we go back to that board, was that accomplished? And it should be crossed off the list. Wow. So if that item or task is still there and that person's name on it, the accountability is there. And obviously there is some pressure from the rest of the team and everyone else that needs to get done. I can't tell you how many team meetings I used to go to, and the same issues come up every time. And it's like, why are we wasting our time? Just get it done. So I think that part of it comes too, is that there's so much going on in life that to keep adding things to the list stresses me out. I'd rather just tackle it, get it done, and move on, right? So I think that it also helps the team improve more often than not. too often or not, we get complaints or things don't go well. And then we're too often enough to point the finger that, oh, that wasn't this way or this wasn't that way, as opposed to looking at it from the standpoint of, well, maybe there's something we could do to improve this, or maybe we can learn from it, or maybe we can adapt to it and change. And that's been the hard part of, you talk about systems, is that it seems like every week or every month there's something different we can change or improve. And so this whole evolution of the practice is really fun, and it's also been getting to the point where you feel like, okay, we're at a great place, but then you realize that 4 months down the road, we're even a better place. And there's a lot of experiences and things that come up that we can still improve upon. But if you're not communicating and coming back to the drawing board of how do we solve that problem, then you go nowhere and people are not as happy as they could be.
Yep, absolutely. And you alluded to earlier, but you're spending a day a week on the business versus in the business.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that and how that came to be.
Sure. So my practice consultant advisor I talk to once a month pushed me out of my comfort zone and said, one day a week you need to have off to focus on things that you want to do and things that involve the practice, and checking back in with employees, and doing things like this podcast that are outside of dentistry.
Yep.
So as of January, I'm lucky enough to have a wonderful associate, Dr. Amanda Jenny. She's been fantastic, and she's the only reason where I felt like I could actually step back, because I trust her and I really appreciate everything she's done. So Fridays are my day where I don't see patients, but I do things around the office. I catch up on emails, I check back in with patients, I follow up with labs. I'm starting to get a little bit more of a well-rounded life, and it's been fun, and I feel like I've got more energy and want to continue doing dentistry because I'm getting more of a balance. And I think that's all something that COVID was hard with, is because we went from having a life to now nothing, and now all of a sudden we're ramping back up. And how do we balance? I've got kids practices here, and I've got meetings here, and I've got staff I got to do with here, and I got to hire this here, and I got to go to work, and I've got to go to the gym, and trying to get back into this idea that it's okay to multitask, and trying to balance that out, and having schedules and using this technology for better of easing our lives and making things more organized. So yeah, it's kind of been a process of just adapting to things and going for it. So,
I mean, it's not easy to do, to say the least. Any business owner knows it's hard to, one, allow the business to run by itself, and two, even just to take one day a week off. But you have a family, you have a wife, you have parents, and you have employees, and there's like so many people to please. So what have you found? Is every Friday similar for you, or?
No, it's all different. Like last Friday, there was a hygienist that was out, so I ended up doing hygiene. Or today, I've got the podcast. It just kind of, whatever comes up as things that would need to be done that I don't have time during the week, as we put it on Friday. So sometimes it's leaving a little early to go do something with the family. Sometimes it's taking care of all those to-do lists that keep getting bigger and bigger through the week. Yeah. And I feel better at the weekend knowing that that's not on my back and haunting me over the weekend of things that I need to be doing.
Yep.
So I think it's just a matter of whatever is coming the way and what's ever the top priority. Sometimes the week I've got a certain plan, and by the time I get to Thursday, the whole plan's changed. And so I just kind of go with the punches and flow, and Friday becomes just a kind of catch-up day. So my catch-up days used to be between 10 and 2 a.m. So I would just go to work, go into family, and then stay up late and do the work and get up and do it all over again. And now I'm realizing that I've put enough hard work into now where I have a little bit more time for balancing and all that stuff. So
I mean, it's no wonder that most dentists and just healthcare professionals burn out relatively quickly, especially if you're in a private practice, because you have all the different hats that you're managing. One of the things that when we were planning this podcast session, you had mentioned to me was this whole idea behind dental insurance. And now, as the host of the Advice First podcast, I think this is very fitting. I'm not a huge fan of dental insurance, and I'm in the employee benefits world. It's a very popular thing, and I'm just like, so when I heard you talk about it, the light bulb clicked immediately. First off, let me ask you this. Is dental insurance a smart thing to invest in?
Dental insurance is much better spent by saving up the cash and paying for prevention. If you have an employer that offers a plan, then sometimes it's affordable and makes sense. But if you are doing it as a self-employed, or if you don't have anything through work, it's not worth the money that you're getting out of it to pay out of pocket for an insurance plan. It may be in the beginning if you have a couple of procedures, but there's a lot of clauses and stuff placed in for certain things that may not even apply to you. A lot of our patients that don't have insurance, we say save up $100 a month and put it in an HSA account, or you can even send the money to your dentist and create an account there, so that by the time you come in, you don't know anything. But the whole idea is if you're on this prevention mode, you should have a fixed cost as to what you should expect each year. How many exams, how many x-rays, how many cleanings, that's how much. You divide by 12, and the costs are actually really not bad at all. When people think about health insurance, they think about, great, once I meet my deductible, it's going to take care of everything else I need. Dental insurance doesn't work that way. Dental insurance says, we're going to give you about $1,000, maybe $2,000 of benefits, and then after that, you're on your own.
Right.
So if you think about if it's been 5 or 10 years since you've been in, and you need a cleaning, you need an exam, you need x-rays, you need 2 crowns, and then, oh, by the way, you need a traction, and then you need an implant. I mean, it's easy. You can go over $10,000 right there. So dental insurance is nowhere to help these people out that need a lot of work. It's great for preventative care, cleanings, exam, x-rays that cover usually 80 to 100%. But in terms of if you were to just save that money and put it in your own pocket, then a lot of times actually people are better off by just paying cash as opposed to using their insurance. One of the biggest things I think that we had talked about too is how, as a dentist, what is the reasoning for me signing up for these insurance plans? So there's PPO plans I can sign up for, and there's HMO plans I can sign up for.
As a dentist?
As a dentist.
Got it.
So what the PPO plan does for me is, if I accept that insurance plan, I have to reduce my fees to what the insurance company will allow me to charge. And they will say, hey, based off of all of our patients that are on our insurance plan, we'll send you more people. So if you imagine what you do for a living, and you say, hey, you're going to take a 30% hit, but you're going to get an increase of new patients, is it worth it to you? So there are some plans that make sense, some plans that don't make sense, and then you have to play that numbers game as a doctor in terms of overhead, in terms of chairs, in terms of number of people coming through your office. So that's where when sometimes people say, are you in my insurance plan? It's a big question is, if it's a PPO plan, even if I'm not in network, you can still get benefits. If you're in network with PPO, you get benefits as well. So if you have a PPO insurance, you can go anywhere you want, right? The HMO insurance is completely different, where if I signed up for that, it doesn't matter if the patient comes in the door or not, I still get a check from that HMO company. So the problem with that is that there's a lot of things on that list of things from that HMO plan that the dentist actually doesn't get paid for. So sometimes when you feel like you're a number just being pushed through the system, it's because it may not benefit them to be doing certain things. So if you imagine, hey, you're going to get 100 new clients this month, 75 of them you're going to get paid $0 for, and those 25 that you can get to upsell or upgrade to, you're going to make your money off of. Why would you spend your energy at going off of the $0 clients? So there's a great place for this in terms of people that are getting great care at affordable prices and that they just need the preventative care. But when it comes to the idea of people feeling like they're upsold, or that people are not honest with them, or people are feeling like this is more of I'm being treated as a pocketbook rather than this is for my health, I think it comes down to they have to understand that dentistry is a business like anything else in this world. And you're going to have different ways of doing things, and you're going to have people that are honest and not honest. And it's your gut instinct as a patient to kind of really do that judgment. So there's a lot of great tools that dentists have in terms of cameras or in terms of x-rays that can explain it. So sometimes as a patient, if you're not comfortable, you don't understand, you just have to sometimes ask. Because there's a lot of things going on our end that sometimes we don't realize that the patients want more information. So a lot of times when people feel like they're upsold, sometimes they just need to speak up and say, can you explain that a little bit more? Or what happens if I don't do that? Or what's the chance of it reoccurring? Or I don't feel any pain, why should I do that? Right? Sometimes it's good as you being your own advocate for your own health is to speak up, because you shouldn't go into the dentist feeling like they're always going to try to upsell you or get you for money, right? They're there to take care of your health. But at the same time frame, if you're not feeling right about it, then you also have the right to go get a second opinion. You also have the right to talk to that dentist and say, hey, can you explain this a little bit more? I would much rather a patient come back to me and say, hey, listen, I really don't feel this is right. I don't think this is what I need, or I don't understand it at all. This seems high. I don't have any pain. Great, let me explain it to you. right? So a lot of this needs to be the patient's ownership of what their own health is, but there is also this part of it that dentistry is a business, and we have to be respectful of the fact that we're trying to do our best job possible, and our heads down. At the end of the day, you've got insurance to pay, bills to pay, employees to pay, HR to pay.
Yep.
There's a lot of things that we have as a business owner, and sometimes it's hard to balance all that. So trying to find that right fit of seeing less patients have the best materials and do the best everything sometimes is hard and from a business standpoint. So I think that's really been over the last 5 years of owning this is how do you find that balance of giving everyone the exact care they need at prices they can afford, and also payment options that make sense, and also of people and staff that deserve to be there for the long term. Right? I'm sure you understand once you meet that hygienist, you finally get that point where you're like, wow, that was great. I don't want to see 10 more people over time. I want to see that same person again because I've started to develop that trust relationship, and then they know for me what's working. So it's a hard thing in dentistry. People don't think of it as a business, but it is a business. And I would just advocate patients to just keep asking questions and don't be discouraged, and don't come in with this front of that we're a used car salesman, right?
Right.
So if you come in with more of an open mind, and if you don't have any understanding, feel free to ask. But this insurance thing is a really hard thing as a provider. A lot of times, physicians will go in and wherever their company is at, that's what they do. With dentists, the same thing. We have opportunities to go through these more corporate dentists where we don't have to worry about anything. We just show up and do dentistry. But then again, we become just a numbers. How many people can get out the door for these big company, right? And that's a great part that I've enjoyed about private practice is more about, for me, is the patient. I'm not here just to be trying to see 100 people a day. I want to make sure that I've made a difference and that they're healthier and they appreciate what we've done. I think there's a lot more reward at the end of the night, when I put my head on the pillow that I made a difference.
Right.
And so I think, in terms of insurance, there's a lot of caveats and a lot of confusion, and a lot of times the front office desks at your dental office can answer a lot of that stuff. So feel free to be your own advocate and ask questions. Because it gets confusing for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that was probably one of the most eye-opening things that you said was, how dentists are compensated based on the individual's insurance. Because I'm just sitting here thinking of, man, how much does that change the diagnosis that these dentists are sharing with their patients or the treatments that they want to provide to their patients? If they're capped on certain treatments, but they know they can recommend this treatment and actually get what they should be, and or the HMO where they're just getting a flat fee, and so maybe they're not recommending any treatment just because they're getting paid anyways.
It's a hard thing, and as a clinician, you're trying to find what can make sense financially, but also what's best for them and their teeth.
Yep.
Because in terms of doing something right the first time, then in 5 years not breaking down and having to pay for it again the second time. Yep. But at the same time frame, if they just spend all the money, they don't have money, how do you make it last until then? So sometimes that patient being open and honest of where they're at financially is helpful. But you're right, it's a tough line, and that's where coming right out of school and not realizing that this money part and the insurance and people's needs and wants is a fine balance to make. And I think that's been the good part of having to wait so long to buy my practice is that I learned from a lot of great people, and I've got a really good understanding of how to do things right. And I think like anything else, just surround yourself with people that you look up to and people that you trust. And if not, then ask around and find a different place, Yep. But there's so many great dentists here in town that a lot of times it's just a misunderstanding of people not asking the question. They're too afraid to pick up the phone and ask, or ask the dentist why this, why that. And that lack of understanding comes into more of a distrust, as opposed to if they would have just asked the question, they would have gained trust and moved forward with things, and it wouldn't have been an issue. So,
Man, that's huge. It was a pleasure having you on. I can't believe we're at 43 minutes. So, for the listeners, they're probably arriving at their destination if you're listening to this in the car. Do you have anything else to share that we have not covered up to this point?
Nope. Okay. I appreciate you having me on the opportunity, and thank you very much.
I'm so glad we found a Friday that you were free enough to spend time on our podcast and not your business, but I know you're going to get back to that. Dr. Edwards, so much insightful information you've shared with us today. I really appreciate it. If you don't know where to find Dr. Edwards, Facebook, Instagram, 360 Dentistry, all words, so THREE SIXTY Dentistry. Again, that's Facebook, Instagram, or the website as well. Or give him a call. Give his office a call. Give his team a call, because like I said, it's 85% his team, 10 to 15%. Dr. Edwards has a pretty nice smile himself. So 661-254-4000, 661-254-4000. Give him a call. Go stop in. Say hi if you're in Southern California. Dr. Edwards, again, pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Robert.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Next Financial Group, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Prosperitas Financial is not an affiliate of Next Financial Group, Inc. This material is not intended as an offer or solicitation for the purchase of sale of any security or other financial instrument. Past performance does not guarantee future performance. All the views expressed are those of Robert Clark and Prosperitas Financial, and not of those of Next Financial Group, Inc. Next does not offer tax or legal advice. The S&P 500 is a market cap weighted index composed of common stocks of 500 leading companies in the leading industries of the U.S. economy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is a price weighted index of 30 actively traded blue chip stocks.